Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to today's webinar, Autodesk Build for Project Managers. Before we begin, please take note of the following. To encourage interaction, we have enabled the chat and the Q&A function. Please post your questions in the Q&A box, which you'll find on the panel at the bottom of your screen. We will answer as many of your questions as possible at the end of this session. Please also be aware that we will be recording this webinar. Before we get started, just to get to know our audience a little bit better, please feel free to drop us in the chat box a little bit about who you are, where you're from, and if you've got any challenges and what they might be. So let's get started. I'm Dominique Janssen van Rensburg, a strategic account manager within the architecture and project management industry, and I'll be co-hosting the session today. I would also like to introduce to you our presenter and host for this session, Michiel Odendaal. Michiel is a BIM consultant and application engineer within the architecture, engineering, and construction industry. For a little bit about the agenda for today's webinar, this webinar will be focusing on a number of key elements, such as your industry context. Then we'll move on to your unified platform, which will include the document management side, project management, and quality management. From there, we'll focus on the Autodesk Construction Cloud ecosystem, and then we will end off with a bit of a Q&A session. We will address any questions and possibly have a look at some of the challenges you might have. Thank you, Michiel. Over to you.
Morning, everyone. Welcome to today's session. I hope you guys all find it interesting what we just kind of have to showcase today. Yeah, so let's get into it. So the first thing I want to talk about, under industry context, our industry is currently very much fragmented, and there has been a shift to improve this workflows to make sure it's not as fragmented. But currently we find siloed information throughout our processes from design to plan to build to operate. And effectively within each stage, we also have a little bit of siloed information where our consultants have their own little environment. The project managers are doing something on that one side, construction companies on different areas, and it's not really cohesive. And when you start integrating that with communication channels and technology being used, it's also kind of, separated in these different stages. And when you start looking at information sharing between these fragmented environments, we get a transfer of models, email sends, chat applications being shared throughout the process. And it's just a variety of tools to address kind of what is needed on a project through the different stages. And that's kind of the crux of our industry problems or needs to be addressed, is to make sure that our information can flow from one environment to the next. And that's ultimately what we want to achieve. We want to be able to have one environment that can take information from design to the planning, to the build, and eventually to operations, with all the relevant data that comes with it. So ultimately, we need a unified platform. We need one space where you can put as much information as possible to kind of continuously build on top of the previous stage. So if we have a unified platform as our focus point, this is ultimately one platform where our client developers can, initiate a project saying, let's have our data in one environment. Our consultants can start designing in this one unified platform and share information through that process, and also include coordination processes, etc. Our project managers can leverage this information coming out of design and coordination stages, going into construction stages, and build upon that data that has already been there. And ultimately, our other stakeholders, from quantity surveyors, facility managers, all of them can start integrating into this unified platform as, the bigger picture where we want to get to in the future. So why is a unified platform really important? The big key ticket items is typically your unified data. It's a place where you can find all videos, photos, drawings, models, asset information in one environment. So you don't need to go look at all your emails, go look at, that server or that online web repository. It's all in one space. At the moment you have a lot of unified data and unified information coming into one point, you can start leveraging insights on what is currently happening on projects. We can pull reports, activities, create dashboards that start giving us more information about our project that we never had before, which enables us to make faster decisions, understand if a project is having problems and where those problems are, and then quickly make decisions. Now we can effectively challenge it or change it. And that is ultimately the need for a unified platform. Now, a unified platform really starts with one core principle, which is your common data environment. And that is what you want to do. One space where people can upload information, share information, and see what's happening with the guy next to them. So let's look at Autodesk Docs as a common data environment, as the base for our projects going forward. So Autodesk Docs brings in the three major components that you need for any project: document control, document approvals, and versioning of information. So when you look at your document controls, it's really a place where you've got a structured environment where information can be shared with the right people at the right time for the right reasons. You've got enhanced permission set, so no one can see the design stage without the design leads giving that permissions. So it creates really a sense of security around what information is available to who. And your document versioning, this really sort of allowing you to keep history of every submission, every version of a file. And with technology, we can leverage that by comparing information between 2D in different 2D drawings. We can start reviewing and comparing 3D models and understand what has changed over the course of the project, what is new information, old information, etc. And lastly is you want to be able to make sure that you've got a robust system for approvals of drawings or models or information. If it's cost reports that need to get approved, or a 3D model or a design change, having a document approval process really creates that space where the person that needs to review those documents can and approve them in one system with the records of what has been approved when. And that was a kind of a brief overview on our three major topics for document approvals. And this is, your common data environment sets the scene for the next stages, which is ultimately looking at Autodesk Build for project managers. So what I like about Autodesk Build is really a great solution for a project process during the construction stages, or at least the build up to construction and all the way through to handover. So when we look at some of the main features around the project management tools, we have submittals, Rfis, schedules, daily reports, and minutes of meeting. Now, there's a lot of other features still usable, and for project managers will be features that stand out. But these were the 5 ones that we wanted to focus on. So if we look at submittals, it's really a place where we can submit any type of document drawing, from shop drawings, as-built documentation, specification documents that we want to get approved and recorded in a specific location within the system. And again, you can do approvals through mobile devices, so it really enables that on-site, off-site environments. And it keeps record of what has been approved, where's what stages. We got Rfis, and most project managers navigate towards these systems for mainly the feature of Rfis to improve that workflow. So with the creation of Rfis, the assignment of it to the consultant or the person that needs to resolve the information, and finally the approval of that information through the manager of the system. You can also take these Rfis and escalate them to change orders and things like that, running the costing of the project as well within the system. We also have the capabilities of using your contractor's program, being able to upload a program into the system, again, allowing the right people to see the right schedule and not necessarily visible to everyone. But now you can have more of a real-time visualization of where the project is, what is ahead of schedule, behind of schedule, completion rates, and you can also question the program for the next stages coming up or the next portion of construction work that needs to be done. And then building into daily reports. Now, I know it's not something that project managers do as an activity, but it's something that they want to have oversight on. What is the workers log, the weather on site? Why can't people work? Was there any accidents? Whatever the case might be. And these daily reports gets captured within the system and shared with the consultants or the relevant people at the correct time. And then last thing is, for me, great feature is being able to run your minutes within one system, having your attendance register built into the system, having the items, the action items, be able to assign to the correct people, given due dates, even attaching any kind of reference documents to it. If it's an RFI, an issue, any documentation like drawings or specifications, it can be attached to your items, and you can create your follow-up meetings, which will bring in the next row of items and also the existing information from the previous meeting for you. So you don't actually have to go manage a lot of Word documents. It's managed within a system. And again, visibility to these items is for the right people at the right time. So kind of, again, just a quick little bit of an overview on the project management kind of tools. Now, like I said, most project managers in principle like the RFI system, and we've seen more project managers starting using submittals and minutes of meetings to really use a standardized way of solving the industry challenges. So a big topic is always quality management of a project. If that's installation qualities or, call it your quality reports or snagging items, all the way through to health and safety items, we need to be able to address those as well. So the system allows for, quality planning, your QA/QC processes, issue management, punch list, more of the American term, but for snagging, but it's all kind of being able to manage that within a system. So with quality planning is you've got the capabilities to create any kind of checklist from an existing PDF or within the system that allows you to control or manage what needs to be checked and who needs to do it. From these checklist items, you can always escalate it into issues, which then gets actionable items and indicated with images, etc. And these checklists can really go as whatever you want it to be. For example, your QA/QC processes can look at the pouring checklist, as our image indicates, whereas like the location of the pours, was there any kind of concerns on site, etc. And these checklists navigates all the way to your mobile device, so you don't have to walk around with your laptop. You can start your checklist on your phone on site and go through what is needed in one go. And again, if anything fails or is required action item, you can again raise an issue from these checklists. And that kind of goes into our issue management portion, like punch list or quality controls. We can raise issues on top of drawings, assign it to people, attach photos to it. So really, when you start getting into that environment where you need to check if stuff on site is what it should be, you can really run it from any kind of device and communicate that to who the people are to need to resolve these items. As we create more and more issues on our project, and could be really anything, we have one space where you can visually see all of them, how far they're along the process, who's currently in charge of it, who needs to resolve it, is it a 3D coordination or a commissioning item, whatever the case is, we've got visibility of it and trackability, which makes it so much easier for the entire construction team and consulting team to actually know what needs to be done. And that kind of rounds out our quality process. Now, with all of this happening in the background, we've got a lot of data being put into a system. And the good thing is all of it is structured data. So the moment we have structured data, our insights into the project become really more usable. So that's where our dashboards, you can see what issues are lagging, which ones are coming up in the next 5 days, to really kind of address project-specific needs at the right time, which gives us a lot of leverage in how we're going to use, how we're going to finish our construction programs going forward. Now, to give a little bit of a breakdown of where everything kind of fits into place and the fuller capabilities of the platform, we did focus a little bit today on the ACC component of it, for project managers, Autodesk Build. But naturally, the system has a lot more features and capabilities. So the system, like I mentioned before, is really a platform, a unified platform that's trying to take information from design to operate and every stage in between. It's broken down into kind of 4 major modules and sections, which is being Autodesk Docs as our common data environment, the base of what is happening on the platform. You can see below Autodesk Docs is our insights, which will take information from our project environments and give us that information of what is happening on a project. We got Autodesk Build Collaborate, which is mostly focused on our designers and allows them to actually collaborate their design models and 3D coordination environments in the cloud on the same project. Then you go over to Autodesk Takeoff, which typically sits in your planning stages, which is for your quantity surveyors to allow them to do 2D and 3D takeoffs. And then lastly, your Autodesk Build, which is for your pre-construction, construction, and handover stages to kind of just round out the whole project process. And kind of just highlighting all the features below them, there's quite a lot that you can do within the system. And as you guys might, looking at these list of features, you can see there's some stuff that might be applicable to you and how you can utilize the system even further. And that's basically it that I wanted to show you guys. So nothing, too extensive. Some great features in the system that will really kind of help boost the construction industry into a new way of adapting and changing the way we do projects.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Michiel. I think we're going to go to the Q&A session now. So let's see if there are some audience questions that we can respond to, as well as some of the challenges. So I've got a question on my side, and it's regarding the Rfis. So we all know that request for information can be a painful process, but yet it is contractually necessary for many parts of the project. Michiel, can you maybe just tell us a bit how would Build simplify this Rfi process?
So what's great about any kind of system is the standardized way of doing things. With the intent of the moment you do, let's say, Rfis via email, the emails get sent around a lot of times to different people, and it takes a lot longer to respond to it. When you implement something into a standardized way, is you've got now specific roles throughout your Rfi, and the information will flow from one person to the next, making sure it gets addressed in the correct order of assignment, and the trackability around it, and ultimately also the communication around it. So one of the biggest challenges is typically with like an email way of resolving these items is someone that's not CC'd in on the email list on the Rfi will not be aware of what is happening on it, and they might need to actually give their input into it. Within the ACC system, once an Rfi has been raised, you can actually comment and address someone onto an Rfi to give their inputs into it. So it's really a process of keeping it as a standardized workflow and making sure the correct people that get it addresses these items.
Wonderful, thank you. I do see we've got a question here. How can RFIs be managed? Can I set due dates or reminders for them to be actioned?
So once an RFI has been assigned to a person, so the specific workflow, and to kind of give you a little bit of insight into it, is you have a creator, someone that can create an RFI. Once they've created it, it goes to a manager. The manager typically reviews the RFIs and decides who it belongs to. If it's going to be, the structural engineer or the architect, then they will assign those RFIs to the responsible person. The moment that is assigned to that person, there's a notification email, and if there's a due date assigned to it, then that is kind of the function of a due date, is to remind you of what's happening. Naturally, it's the system won't tell you that it won't send out necessarily a reminder email saying, listen, you're falling behind on this RFIs. And that's why we got the insights and the reports that we can pull out, and actually your normal communication and collaboration between consultants and contractors. But those due dates will allow you to actually keep track when is this information needed, and actually who needs to supply. And once a reviewer uploads the response to it, it goes back to the manager, and then the manager decides if it's sufficient or not. If the information is sufficient, he just closes it out and distributes it to the distribution list of who needs to be informed that this has been done.
Perfect. Then the next question is, you mentioned QA and QC management and health and safety management. Please can you explain how ACC Build can assist my company with these items?
So any kind of QA QC process is typically built around what is the item I'm checking for. If I'm doing an installation of an HVAC unit, do I need to check the fixing connections? Do I need to check if there's power? And all those kind of items can be built into your QA/QC. And then once you're on site and you're doing an inspection of X item, you can actually just run that report on the item itself. And if something doesn't comply, you escalate it into an issue. The same logic is applied to health and safety. However, you can either do of a more formalized approach, like doing a form and run it through that process. Normally, we recommend that forms are used for documenting major items, and you can use a health and safety issue item to just tick it if there's problems, like cleaning of an area, maybe scaffolding it looks loose, or whatever the case might be, which doesn't need a full-on report but needs to be documented and assigned to someone else. So these items can really, be leveraged internally and externally. It doesn't need to be always on a project. You can also run internal processes for these items.
Great, thank you, Michiel. Then there's another question that came through. They are asking, can you assign more than one member or company role to an RFI? That's a great question.
Yeah, so it talks a little bit of the technicalities around it. So a RFI, if the manager, so you can have multiple roles and companies assigned to the workflows of an RFI. Actually, not roles, it's more user-based. So I can have multiple people being creators, from subcontractors, the contractors, the different people underneath them. I can have multiple people being the manager of RFI. So the construction company might have 2 or 3 guys that are RFI managers. When you look at the approvers or the reviewers, the people that will actually address these issues, typically you will assign it to one person. That is the responsible reviewer. That person needs to address or ultimately give feedback to what is the case happening there. However, you can have multiple co-reviewers. So for instance, it might be a design or request for information around a detail on a wall and concrete floor, as an example. The architect might be the reviewer, but part of the co-reviewer list is the structural engineers taking responsibility for that slab information. So, and then between those combination of people or disciplines, they will come up with an answer and then address that answer together.
Perfect. There's 2 more questions that came in. So firstly, first question is training offered on ACC Build? So yes, we do. Moderna does customized training for all our clients. And then the second part of that question is, how extensive is the training? Michiel, can you please elaborate a bit on that for us, please?
So the approach we take is more of a bite-sized approach. We don't like throwing you into the deep end and say, yeah, here's the platform, we're going to teach you everything in 2 days, and there you go. We do break it out into bite size, taking you through the system, especially if it's a the first time you're on a system like this, and go you through the features and how to use what's the best practice in the industries. That is more if we do like a company-based training, so everyone in the company uses it. We also do project-based training. So that's where we actually take the consultants, the contractor, everyone on the project, and take them through the best practices and workflows for the project itself, which is, I think, one of the most common kind of approaches that we've gotten in the last few years, is to make sure that at least the the team that's working on the project knows how to use the system.
Perfect. Then the next question, it's got two parts. The first part of it is, what would you say is the biggest obstacle in getting buy-in for ACC implemented fully on new projects?
Biggest obstacle in getting buy-in for ACC. I think the challenge is, and it's always a challenge, I don't think we'll ever get away from it, no matter at what product or software you're looking at, is a conversation of cost. Ultimately, cost has been the biggest challenge for everyone. However, what has been a kind of a big value change in the conversation is the fact that your cost for the software is now offset with you don't need to be on site every second day or every third day. Information is now shared in a quicker way with relevant information. It's not just an RFI that's raised, it's an RFI that's raised with photos, with documentation, suggested answers or solutions. So it can be reviewed quite quickly off-site, which changes the conversation. We've got many projects where the guys are doing more project work in Africa, and this has allowed them to actually be more engaged with the project, and instead of having to fly there every week, they've reduced the amount of flights to need to go to site. So there's a lot of offset the moment you start using a system like this.
Perfect. And then the second part of that is, how do you influence project managers to trust you to adopt this platform?
So actually, I found it the other way around. I found it more recently now that project managers want to actually run the projects on these systems, even if it's just for construction stages. They allow the design and coordination stages to kind of be discussed and managed with the, call it the principal agents, the architects, etc. But project managers have been almost a bigger driving force these days in the adoption of the build process, because ultimately when you look at the construction side of things, that's where they really get into the nuts of it and really want to manage what is happening there. And this system like this really solves all of those kind of visibility items throughout the process.
Right. So last question that came up is, does ACC Build have an open API?
Yes. So Autodesk Construction Cloud is built on top of Autodesk's Forge platform, which is basically an extensive programming environment. It's not a programming language, but environment where you can actually build customizations that will take information from the system out into other systems or push information into the system itself. So it's really, if you want to know more about that, please be in contact with us, because it can really change the way how you perceive your data flow and what you can do with that information.
Right. Thanks, Michiel. I don't see more questions coming through. So I would say that brings us to the end of our webinar. I'd like to take this opportunity just to say thank you to Michiel for hosting today's webinar. And also a thank you to all of our attendees that took the time today just to join us for this session. And then what we'll do is the recording will be made available. It will be on our website and as well as on our YouTube channel. But if you require, we're happy to send that through to you. We'd like to thank you for your time and stay safe and stay well. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.